The nerve. This is an overkill. Can they really do that? Oh my God, they are overreaching. Do they have what it takes? Who do they think they are? These were some of the reactions to the new TVC by ALAT by Wema, titled The Future of Banking. The ad takes viewers to the time when banking would be one hell of a seamless experience, tailored to the customer's lifestyle and powered by advanced technology. However, it seems being the first fully digital bank in Africa is not enough qualification to herald the future of banking. Does ALAT truly have what it takes? Hold the phone. Why don't we just ask them? Exclusively online with Linda. Alright guys, we're ready to roll. ALAT has joined in. We're going to speak to them today about their last TVC and everything that's been going on with the brand. Like I said, the last time I posted the TVC about ALAT, I got a couple of calls from some people asking me, do they have the capacity to deliver this? You know, I got a lot of comments and then I said, let's just find out from them. Let's ask them. Hi, Mr. Babatunde.
Hi, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us. How was your night?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Great. I'm excited because I was telling the audience that, after your last TVC, I got a lot of comments. Even behind the scenes, people kept asking me, is ALAT, can they deliver on these things they are promising? It's too much. And I just, yeah, they said it's too much. So I felt, okay, maybe you guys have something in the works that we don't know about. So today we are going to find out. But my first question to you, Mr. Babatunde, from your TV, I can see that you've had a lot of experience working with consulting firms, and you've actually been one of the major drivers of the transformation process in Wema Bank and ALAT. So I'm sure you have a wealth of knowledge to share with us today. Thank you once again for joining us. My first question to you would be, how does it feel like to be the first fully digital bank in Africa? What does it feel like?
Okay, so that happened already 3 years ago. So at the time, it was great. It was a euphoric feeling. Now that feeling is 3 years old. At the time, it was fantastic. Very, very euphoric for everyone at Wema Bank. But in many ways, I guess the market has moved on. We have also moved on, and we are basically on to the next great thing. So it's a feeling that we now have in our rearview mirrors, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so one of the things that bothered me about the ALAT brand was I was at first I was confused because this is a bank, Wema Bank, it's been in
Yes.
existence for over 75 years, right? And I
Yep.
think recently, I don't know if it was 2009, you did some rebranding, some facelifting. I think it was recent for Wema Bank, not even for ALAT, for Wema Bank. And then all of
Yep.
a sudden, I saw Wema ALAT, and I was confused. It's like you already have a bank that is functional and working and have this 75 years heritage, right? So why open another bank? What was the idea behind ALAT? Why didn't you take Wema Bank digital instead of starting or establishing a fresh new, digital bank? So what was the idea behind that?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. At the time of launch of ALAT, Wema Bank was 73, and this was maybe a year out of the 2015-2016 recession. And really, on the minds of the management of the bank, it was like, okay, so what next for us, right? And there were a number of options on the table at the time, but it was to say, how do we bring out something new and fresh to the market, at the same time targeting a young-ish segment of customers. And so amidst all the options, none of them right, none of them wrong, we took a strategic decision to say, you know what, let's launch something that is slightly distant from the parent brand, if you will, but still somewhat connected. And so we went with ALAT by Wema. So it was supposed to be a fully digital play, catering to a segment of customers that maybe historically we hadn't had very strong links and offerings to, if you understand what I mean.
Okay.
So that's what
Yeah.
led to that. But again, as with many things, we found that that has progressed somewhat. And what we see is that there's an opportunity for us to leverage some of the digital capabilities we've built with ALAT
Okay.
to power the bank itself. And so in many ways today, what we see is ALAT as our digital platform, while Wema Bank remains the bank in the traditional sense of it.
Exactly. I thought that was the idea. Wema Alert was supposed to be an app, right? But
Well,
it was
in some
right.
ways, a little more than an app.
Okay. Because
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people are still confused as to, okay, so why do you now have two banks running side by side? How does that work? Are you planning to merge them into one later on, or are they going to be functioning differently? Because they're basically doing the same thing, right?
Okay, so let me use an example that comes to mind. You
Okay.
have Apple as an organization. It's a technology company, but Apple, for
Mhm,
instance, also has iTunes or Apple Music.
mhm,
Apple Music
mhm.
actually is a better example because it is something that people even outside of the Apple ecosystem are able to use. You don't need an Apple device to use Apple Music. And so it's sort of two separate-ish brands, but one being a platform that's open to customers anywhere to use. So, for instance, you don't have to be an existing customer of Wema Bank to use ALAT. And then the other
Mhm.
is the bank in the sense that we know banks to be today. So, um, I get how it can be maybe a little bit confusing, but it's
Yeah.
really a question of strategy and a question of our own context as an organization where we found ourselves at the time we were going to launch.
Okay, so if I get you correctly, at that time you needed something new and fresh for Wema Bank, and you decided, and I think it's actually nice because this gives you a stronghold in the market because you have something that is unique to you as a brand, allowed by Wema. So, but like I said, it's still a bit confusing, and I think sometimes we need maybe as time goes on, a lot of people will be clear as to what the difference is between the Wema Bank and the Alad. Because from what I see so far, it seems Wema Bank is pushing more of Alad than Wema. So it's like the Wema Bank is now like you said, maybe like the mother company, the mother brand, and then Wema Alert is now the face of the brand. That's what's happening right now, right?
To a certain extent, yes. And let me just take an opportunity to emphasize the issue of a platform. Banking in and of itself is changing quite a bit. Before now, the average bank had a mobile app that was basically an extension or a mirror of the services they rendered in their banking hall, right? With Alert, it's a little bit more than that, in that we don't necessarily need you to be a Wema Bank customer. So we're not saying all of the services that you could have enjoyed as a Wema Bank customer, here is an application that gives you an extension of that. We're saying anybody and anyone from wherever you are in Nigeria that needs services, financial services across the board, here is a platform for you to use, regardless of whether you are a customer or not.
So it's just a case of which of the banks you prefer. So Alert by Wema is basically targeting people that are digital savvy, while Wema Bank is targeting people that like the traditional way of banking. You want to go to the bank, see their teller or the customer service face to face. That's what I'm getting that the strategy is for ALAT and Wema Bank, right? Something like that.
Close.
Great. All right. So how did you, because a lot of people would be wondering, okay, so how did ALAT happen to be the first fully digital bank in Africa? Why did you think you were able to achieve that ahead of other banks that we know are in we are called tier one banks in Nigeria? ALAT was able to strategically position itself as a fully digital bank in Africa. Why did you think you were able to do that? You said something about having a robust ICT, department. Does that have anything to do with why you were able to achieve that goal?
So to a very large extent, yes. Here's how I see it. I think that um, being the relatively smaller organization, we had absolutely nothing to lose. So it's a
Mm,
question of focus, of drive, and in many ways, knowing that we didn't have the same strengths, if you will, as the core tier one banks, as you put it, we had to find an area to differentiate. And taking the long view, knowing that ultimately technology will be the central driver, know it today. We decided to pitch our tent with technology. And so, could there have been anybody else to do it before us? Maybe so. But I think that we had the strongest incentive to do it at the time. And that's why we beat everyone else to it.
okay, great. So incentive, what about capacity? Do you think you have the
Um,
capacity, you know? Because,
Capacity comes down to one thing, really, if we're being honest. It's
okay,
people. I know we're having a discussion around technology, but it is people who build technology. It's people who use
mm-hmm,
technology. So
mm-hmm.
our greatest capacity in this area has actually been our people. And over the last couple of years, obviously with greater intensity since 2017, Wema Bank has become home to some of Nigeria's best and brightest as far as digital technology is concerned.
Okay. So you're investing in people when it comes
Yeah,
to technology to be able to
yeah,
do, because one of the problems a lot of people had was, technology, a digital bank is not easy to be able to manage in this time and age, especially with issue of security, So my concern would be how are you going to be able to achieve what you said you were going to do in your TVC? you know it's not just about saying, oh, we have the capacity. I would really like for you to break it down. What exactly do you have to make you do that sort of TVC that tells people that you are the one, Wema Bank, ALAT is the one heralding people to the future of banking, and this is what the future of banking would be like. So we're going to come to whether or not you're going to achieve it, but why? What really do you have in place to be able to achieve that?
Okay, thanks, Linda. So allow me, I heard a security question that I don't want to let slide. So let me answer that first. It's not one of the things you'd hear about in the news, but Wema Bank was one of the first banks in Nigeria, again, to hire a chief information security officer. We were one of the first banks to deploy a security operations center. So we understand the criticality of the fact that as life increasingly moves online, as business and banking move online, security becomes a greater threat. And we are matching our aspirations with the investments in that area. So we do have a very, very, very robust information security and cybercrime prevention framework in place as it is today. So now to the question about the TVC. I think personally, I'm happy that people are asking questions, it means that we are on the right track. If we weren't ruffling any feathers or getting people to talk, then it would have meant that our aspirations were bland. Now, the good thing about any TVC or ad is that it's the right blend of reality and aspirations. And so in many ways, what you see there is Wema Bank's aspiration as an organization. And so you ask the question, what do we need to put in place to ensure that we achieve that? And I'll say, let me take you back to how ALAT was built in the first place. We started out building ALAT by listening to our customers. That's really it. It's as simple as that. I wish I could spin some very, very complex tale to tell you it's because of so and so, but we were just listening to people and trying to get a pulse of what do people need next, right? And so in one area, if you think about it, as far as human beings are today, the way we operate, there are two principal means by which we interact with our environment. The first is touch and the other is voice. So if you're sitting with a colleague and you have a cup of coffee in between, you can either grab your cup or you can say, X, please pass me that cup. And so we believe that voice is the next natural interface as far as building new technology is concerned. It hasn't quite enjoyed about the same pace as touch, but we see that it is coming. And so that's part of what inspired putting out that TVC. And the other thing is, if you look at it, it's also matched very closely with the evolution and performance of digital assistants like Alexa, like Siri. People are increasingly getting comfortable with speaking with their technology. And so to wrap all of that together, bottom line is that we are listening to our customers. We have a sense of what they want next. And our philosophy or our principle as an organization is be where your customers are. If that's on a phone or if it's on a speaking interface, we want to be there. And so we are taking conscious steps, not just to build technology for technology's sake, but to build the sort of technology that allows us to remain in context with our customers wherever they are.
Okay, I'm going to ask one question now about perception. Okay, because let's face it, Mr. Babatunde, if it was a tier one bank that released that TVC, people will not be asking as much questions as they're asking now. Like, do they have
Fair
the
enough.
capacity? Do you understand what I'm saying? So there is an issue now with, okay, the perception people have of Wema Bank. I want to ask, if from your own opinion, what do you think the perception is like of Wema Bank? And since inception till date, or let's not even talk about Wema Bank, let's even still talk about ALAT. What has the reception been like? What do you think the perception of the bank is compared to the tier one bank?
So let me start from the Wema side of the conversation.
Okay.
This year we turned 75 on the 2nd of May, and that's a significant milestone by any stretch of the imagination. We are Nigeria's oldest indigenous bank. But if you look critically at the story, sort of the history of the bank itself, like any organization that has been in business for over 7 decades, it has been a mix of performance here and there. Anyone who's watched the banking industry critically, you would have found that it has sort of been in cycles. People have been at the top and then they found themselves somewhere lower, and newer people have emerged on top and whatnot. A lot of the banks we call tier one banks today, at least 2 or 3 of those banks are relatively new, if you will, in terms of the overall history of banking in Nigeria. So we realized that the general perception of Wema Bank is old bank. But old bank is not necessarily a bad thing. If you think about the fact that banking itself is an over 300-400-year-old industry. And so that's good. The fact that we're old means that we are resilient. in a continent such as Africa, where you find that it is difficult to keep businesses for a sustained bit of time. It means that we have done this well. I would argue that how about we allow the current tier one banks an extra 40 years and let's see where they are at that time. So we get it right now. However, on the ALAT side of the conversation, yes, we're 3 years old now, and the perception is slightly different, even though by virtue of the fact that we still maintain the association between both brands. We hear people say, does it mean you are going to take on the old people behavior, or are you going to wrap everyone in the new people behavior? The truth is, the organization is evolving, and eventually what we believe is that the perception will catch up with what we put out there. And as long as we continue to deliver seamless, best-in-class services to our customers, we will let them change their minds over time.
Okay, but what has changed so far? Because, like you said, Wema Bank has been 75 years in the business, right? And in that 75 years, we did. Wema is still not like top 5 when it comes to Let's even forget about profit, right? Now let's talk about popularity. Let's talk about brand awareness, top of mind. Wema is not top 5. So what has changed? What are you doing differently to ensure that you get the customer's attention? And apart from launching ALAT by Wema, which you've done, what other things? What has changed in the management? What has changed in your behavior? What has changed in your culture?
So a very common question I ask people is, when last have you visited a Wema Bank branch? Just by way of example. And a number of times the answer is, well, no, never. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I went with my dad, etc., etc. So the truth is, quite a lot has changed. So ALAT is what we're putting out there to our customers, even internally as an organization. There's so much of what we're doing that is changing us internally in terms of our DNA, just the way people work, the kind of people we hire, the sort of skills that we're looking for in the market, the way that our offices are set up, the kind of teams that we're working in. So like I said, perception is a very potent thing, but it's also quite fickle. What I believe is that over time, as these things sort of cement themselves and people understand that this is not a fluke, this is not a one-time thing, these people are really serious about their technology play, as these ideas come to stay, I believe that minds will change. Like I said, 75 years in any business. I can ask you to count how many indigenous businesses in Nigeria are 75 years old. I think you probably will not be able to count past the fingers of one hand, right?
We know Wema Bank is the longest surviving indigenous bank in Nigeria. That's
not just surviving, also thriving.
Great.
Also thriving.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, I hope you guys are listening. If you have any questions, like I said, please use the question tab below. After going through my questions, I'll check yours and see if Mr. Babatunde can also answer them as well. Right. So now let's go back to the TVC, Mr. Babatunde. Weren't you scared that if you release this sort of TVC to talk about the future of banking, another bank might just do it before you? Weren't you scared about that? And what have you put in place to ensure that really ALAT leads the future of banking?
Okay, so I'll say two things. First of all, yes, we were a little scared. And it's good for your dreams to scare you. If not, you are not dreaming big enough. However, can somebody else go ahead and do it first? Possibly, but first is not always best, if you understand what I mean. So it's fine. Um, what we do understand is that at the end of the day, as long as, and I mentioned in an earlier point, our commitment is to try to be where our customers are. So it's not just banking that's changing; it's all of life. 15 or
Yeah.
20 years ago, if we wanted to have this interview, we would have had to meet up in a studio somewhere
Yeah.
with a proper camera and crew, the whole
Yeah.
shebang, and we'll sit and have the conversation and whatnot. But today, it's possible for us, total strangers before today, hopefully not after, to have a 1 hour long conversation about stuff,
Yeah.
all enabled by technology. So the truth is that we are more interested as an organization in integrating into the lives of our customers to enable their day-to-day lives. That's really what it is as a philosophy, right? So it's not really about us trying to be first, even though fortuitously we have been first in a number of things. It's serving our customers and ensuring that through that relationship, they get the best from us. That's really what it is.
Okay, so what I'm getting is that you're not scared, um, but you are equal to the task. I'm sure you have your things
Just
in
a
place
little,
to be
just a
able
little, just a little.
to. So when do you reckon that banking would be like you depicted in the TVC? What do you have a time frame?
So here's the thing about the technology. It does not exist in a vacuum. Um, I will give you an example. When we watched old movies growing up, there were certain scenes that had to be done using CGIs, computer generated images. And you remember those old movies, how some of those scenes looked really, really tacky. Like you could tell the explosion was fake. You could tell that the buildings were not really there. And the truth is, at that time, they had the ideas for all of those bright and beautiful things, but the technology of the day just didn't allow them to do it quite as seamlessly as they imagined. But fast forward 20, 30 years with movies like Avatar, for example, and you find that as the technology got better, a lot of the things also got better. Voice as an interface is not new. Um, for the geeks on the call, anybody who grew up watching Star Trek, for instance, would remember a lot of voice commands. If you also watched Minority Report, you would remember a lot of touching the air and all of the interfaces. These things have been embedded in our imaginations for a long time, right? But the truth is that the technology to bring it to life has taken some time. So can I say in 6 months you are going to have that? Not entirely so, but safe to say that it is something that is actively in our pipeline, and we will release once the technology actually works.
But that's what I was afraid of because that's the same thing that happened to AT&T. They had, oh, I don't know if you know about them. They had all these plans about what the future was going to be like in terms of telecommunication, how you're going to be able to do stuff with your phone and blah, 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 blah. They had all of those things in the work, but they didn't have the technology at the time to make it available to the masses at an affordable rate. And before you knew it, Apple and the others came in and did it before them, and it was like they failed. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now you're telling me this that is making me remember that we've gone through this before. I hope it's not going to be the same case with AT&T. I don't want it to be because you might just lose some of the trust your customers have on
Okay,
you.
so to that example, first and foremost, no, we will not be like AT&T. However, just to point out, like I said, the ideas are a dime a dozen, right? Anybody can think up anything and say this is the future of X, right? But the truth is that what needs to happen. How did the Apples and the Googles and whoever leapfrog AT&T to actually deliver the value? If you look at it very closely, it's a function of two things. First and foremost is timing it right, and the other bit is following consumer demand. And I can't overemphasize the criticality of that. It's really easy to ideate and paint pretty pictures, but it is actually a lot more critical to constantly stay in touch with what your people need and make sure that you are able to deliver that on time. And honestly, that's what continues to give me the confidence that Wema Bank will continue to lead the discussions around technology in the industry, because like I said, it's not about the toys that we're trying to build. It's really about trying to serve a specific set of people. And that focus is
One thing
what
I've
will
noticed in
ensure that
this
we're able to
conversation so
deliver.
far is that you keep referring to technology, technology, technology. Did you get that? Did you get that?
Sorry, take that again.
Yeah, I said one of the things I noticed in this conversation is that you're always referring to technology, technology, your technology. So is it like that's one of the strongest points or one of the strongest things you think, stands your bank out?
I would say it's our second strongest point. First being our people. Like I mentioned earlier, is people who build technology, right? So our people and then our tech.
Okay, but so far so good. When people think of banks that have gone digital, like I said, ALAT or Wema still is not top of mind, like number one. What are you doing to make sure? Because you're saying these things, they look good, they sound nice, technology is there, and I also read somewhere that your ICT is actually very, very robust, right? But how come the message is not out there? Because if the populace know, they wouldn't be saying, why are these people feeling themselves? Why are they overreaching? They will be confident that, okay, Wema Bank can actually deliver. So there's something wrong somewhere. And,
Exactly.
you know, yeah, there's a gap, there's communication gap somewhere that needs to be addressed. Because, like I said, I've seen a lot that you have done. And for me, I think being the first at anything, no matter how small, is amazing. Having your first mover advantage is amazing, is good, it's something you should milk, and then also develop on it and, grow on it. So it's good, but like I said, I do not think that maybe Wema Bank
How are
has
we
done
putting
enough.
our message out there?
Exactly. So
Mm.
what's the plan? What's the plan? Even this last TVC that was released, I don't think it was everywhere the way it was supposed to be. Do you do marketing? Do you advertise? Or, just fill us in. What's really, why is there this communication gap? Why are people still doubting that you have the technology, even though you're saying, yes, we have it and it's better than most other banks that we know? That of most other
Okay.
banks. Yeah.
Fair point, fair argument from you. What I'll say is this. The plan is already in play. And like you already pointed out, the TVC is just one of several means that we're using to put out the information of what we've done out there, right? So over time, what you will find is that perceptions are easy to build, but very difficult to shake, if you think about that. And I know that this is me veering into your own realm of expertise, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So it's very easy to build an impression, but it's difficult to shake it off. What I think is happening is that it will take some time for us to completely transform the narrative. We have a full suite of marketing capabilities, traditional marketing, digital marketing. We are employing best-in-class people and tech to try to put our message out there in a way that we believe will resonate. And what I can say with a measure of authority to you is that we have seen that needle move. Has it gone as fast as maybe certain people would like, or maybe industry experts or critics? Maybe not, but we have seen a steady and consistent shift in the way people understand who we are and what we do. So what I can give you as an example is to say 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. You would not have thought us interesting enough to invite us to this show, right?
Of
So
course.
it means that we are already
Yeah.
doing certain things right. So I would
Yeah.
say let's give it some time and allow some of these things to actually kick in. And then we believe that in the near future, it will be very difficult for you to speak about cutting edge financial services and technology in Nigeria without talking about ALAT or Wema.
Great. All right. So one last question before I start taking other people's questions. Um, there's this issue. There's this thing I've always noticed with banks and telecommunication. It seems there's always one problem or the other. Mr. Babatunde, if I go to your comment section now, there is one person complaining about one thing or the other. Same with other banks, not just Wema Bank. It's
True.
constant. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's
I
too
do.
much. Yeah, so is there a solution? Is it that we can't really get it right when it comes to banking to the extent that we have just minimal complaints? Because there's definitely going to be complaints. People always complain. But at least can we reduce it? And what is Wema Bank doing differently in that it can, because you're telling me now your technology is strong, your technology is this. So why do we still have so many complaints about technology with regards to your bank?
Okay, so let me say you've helped me to frame this very well by saying that it's a common thing. I would
Mm-hmm.
say, and this is how I understand it, I think we are victims of statistics. Banks and telecoms companies have a large number of users. And so
Okay.
when you have a large number of users, it stands to reason that you will get a fairly higher degree of people having issues in one way or the other, right? But again, so that we put it in context, if you visit our Instagram page, for instance, as ALAT or Wema Bank, you might find X number of complaints, and it might look like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is a lot. But if you think
Yeah.
about the number of customers that we serve on a day-to-day basis who are actually happy with our services, who don't come to social media to come and complain, so their voices are hidden, not lost. It helps you to put it in proper perspective, sort of. So the complaints are part and parcel of the business. And what we do is that as an organization, our understanding is that this is a critical part of the feedback process. So it helps us to actually continue to do this better. The more we hear back from our customers, the more we are able to improve on our offerings, improve on our channels. And so considerably, what people actually don't understand about complaints is that complaints mean that your customers care. If they didn't care, they won't bother. They will probably just move on to the next person, right? So it shows us that people actually appreciate the services that we render, and they care enough to let us know when something is broken. And so we will continue to fix that. But what else are we doing, as an organization? Outside, I guess, of all of the obvious things, such as our contact center and all of the other issue resolution channels. Because of the same commitment to technology, a lot of things that we're doing is actually around enabling customers to self. We find that quite a number of the complaints that we see are around sort of, if you will, simple things that can be resolved fairly easily and actually can also be automated. So we are looking to empower our customers to fix these issues themselves. And in analyzing the entire scope, so to speak, of complaints that we get on a day-to-day, we find that this accounts for well over 70% of the total complaints that we get. So once our customers are empowered to resolve these issues themselves, you will find that there will be a drastic drop in terms of the number of complaints that we get on a day-to-day. So self-service is the way to go.
Okay, great. So that's what you're working on, self-service,
Yeah.
to be able to, yes, take attack, because it's really, really embarrassing. I know you said that, oh, you guys are victims of statistics. So with same with other banks, but I'm sure that abroad, right, they've been able to overcome these things. And I'm happy that you're not making excuses saying, oh, okay, it's normal. And I'm happy that at least there's a plan to actually make sure that some of these complaints are not even happening in the first place, because it's really,
Yeah.
really, really like
Yeah.
embarrassing. Not just to you as a bank, but to
No, no,
Nigeria as
perfectly
a,
understood.
because yeah, we're in a digital world now. Everybody will make their complaints online. That's it. So everybody just has
Yeah.
to sit up and do whatever it takes. All right. So one last question. Nigeria, I don't know, we're still majorly underbanked in Nigeria, right? So, because this coronavirus thing, when it happened and then the banks opened, I was so surprised to see a lot of people struggling, fighting to get into the bank. And I was like, what's going on here? It just means that a lot of people are still not, open to digital, digital banking. I know a bank staff that is afraid to use her cards, her ATM card online. So there's so many. I know you've answered the question of security before, but there's so many things, that is still crazy with regards to digital banking. And here is a lad saying that I'm going to do I'm the first fully digital bank, and in the nearest future we're going to take it a step further, and people are afraid. You've answered the issue of security question before, but I think you should take it one more time. What exactly have you done to ensure that your platform is fail safe?
Okay. So let me say a few things. So first and foremost, 15 to 20 years ago, many people in the industry thought that ATM cards would not work in Nigeria. They thought that it would be a failure, right?
Yeah.
But as the years have progressed, more and more people have gotten comfortable with the technology, right? And it has become a widespread part of life as we know it today. Doesn't mean that everyone is using it, but it means that it has grown over time. Now, why would we make a bet on digital technology? I would say two things. First is just look at the growth of mobile phones and look at the growth of data usage in Nigeria. I don't have statistics off the top of my head, but what we
Mm.
see is that year on year, it is growing as the devices are getting cheaper, as data is getting cheap. 10 years ago, 1,000 naira would get you 260 megabytes of data
Mm.
from any service provider. Today, 1,000 naira would probably get you 2 gig, if not more,
Mm.
right? And so, what it means is that access is improving. So yes, today now, there's still quite a significant portion of our population that's underbanked, but these guys are getting more comfortable with technology. When I have this conversation, I often use the example of my security guard
Mm.
a couple of years ago who had a smartphone, and I walked in on him and a few friends actually sending media files to each other. And I was like, this is someone who has no formal education to speak of.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the device he's using is not in his native language. So he has somehow figured out a way to use this device to do certain things that help make his life better, right? And so in many ways that has shaped my perception of just how well technology will catch on eventually. So I would say we need to give this a little bit of time for things to catch on. Now, from the security point of view, let me start by saying that no platform is 100% fail safe. Nowhere on this planet, I don't know any CEO or chief information security officer that will tell you he has a 100% fail safe platform. But like I said earlier, on our side, we have the duty of care to ensure that we do our best to ensure that our platforms are safe. The rest of it is largely around customer education and awareness, which is also something that we're actively doing. And just to get our customers to understand, on the one hand, so it's not just education to say, use this. It is also education to say, while you use this, here are some things that you don't do, right? Don't give out your PIN, don't give out your security question, don't do so and so. So there's quite a lot that we need to do, and this is not the responsibility of any one bank. It's the industry as a whole that bears the collective responsibility to ensure that people know what the right behaviors are in the new sort of digital world, if you will. So it's a mix of things. Keep your platform safe, but also teach your customers what the right behaviors are.
Okay. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you very much for answering most of our questions. I'm a bit comfortable now. If I have any other questions, I'm sure I'll send them to you and then have
Please,
you answer them. Thank you so much
please.
for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Like we're rooting for ALAT. We're rooting for you guys to, you know, we're waiting for you guys to, like I said, lead us to the future of banking. Hopefully, it's not another case of AT&T.
Nope.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully you live up to expectation. And thank you so much, like I said, for joining us. I hope you had a nice time. Do you have any questions?
No, none at all. Thank you for having me. And in many ways, being able to come onto a platform such as the one you're building here is also of benefit to us. It allows us to put out there to all of the people who engage with you closely what exactly it is that we're doing. And hopefully, in however small a way, we have shifted the narrative somewhat over the last 1 hour or so. So we say thank you to you as well.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming, joining us. All right, so hopefully we'll see you some other time. Thank you so
I'll
much,
be
Mr.
glad to.
Babatunde.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your
All
day.
right, bye. Yeah. All right, guys. So it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope all your questions were answered. I hope I was able to cover everything. If I wasn't, please let me know. You can leave your questions. I'm going to post this on YouTube, so you can leave your questions on the comment section or on Instagram. And I'll definitely find a way to forward them to Mr. Babatunde to answer your questions. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And make sure you join us for the next episode. All right. So thank you. Bye.